So
hang
all.
on, hang on. Anytime.
Okay. All right. That's it. Now we wait. And then over the course of this happening, we'll see this clear up. The turbidity will drop to zero, and we'll actually be able to see that light shine through again.
Does it take a while?
It does. So this step takes at least 40 minutes. Yeah, between 30 and 40 minutes, we'll see where we're at. Do it again.
Yeah, wait for me, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'll just say action. Action. Come on down. Perfect. Slate, say what it is.
The Breweries sustainability interview, Luke Studer.
What?
Okay. Well, thank you. First, I'm just going to have you state your first and last name, your title here, and
Yeah.
what you do.
My name's Luke Studer. I'm the head brewer at Bull City Burger and Brewery, and I'm in charge of beer production.
Awesome, awesome. So, to get started, I'm just going to have you walk us through the beer making process.
Yeah.
Essentially, as much as you've shown us today. If you want to get into, how beer is actually made a little bit, and then from there, we're going to go dive into the sustainability, water, and waste side of things.
Okay.
So, whatever
Yeah.
you can give us from that.
So what you've seen so far is we start the brew day with milling the grain. We're cracking open that barley kernel to expose starches. It runs through our auger system and drops into the mash tun. The mash tun is where we mix the cracked grain and hot water. We are shooting to get that to a temperature between 150 and 155 degrees. It's what's called the brewer's window. In the barley kernel itself, there are two enzymes, alpha amylase and beta amylase, and those two are responsible for breaking down the starches inside of the barley kernel into simpler sugars, which the yeast can then eat later on in the process to make alcohol. So we've done that so far. We milled in to the mash tun. I think I've already said that. Milled into the mash tun, and now we're doing what's called vorlaufing. It's taking the liquid that we've made and running it back over the grain bed. The grain bed itself acts as a nice filter bed. As we run it over itself, the small particulates of grain get trapped in the bed itself. Once we've reached a level of clarity, we will then pump it over to the kettle, which is where we bring it to a boil. Bringing it to a boil does a couple things for us. One, it volatilizes a few chemical compounds that we don't want in beer. And then we also add our hops at different intervals depending on what we want to do. So we add hops towards the beginning of the boil if we want to add more bitterness. We add hops at the end of the boil if we're looking for more flavor and aroma.
Perfect. Thank you. And so you talk a little bit about your ingredients on the first part of things. Can you talk about more the input side of things? So the actual solid ingredients and water and what other inputs go into the beer making process?
Beer is 4 primary ingredients. We have malt, which for us is primarily malted barley. We also use a little bit of rye, oat, wheat, depending on the type of beer we're brewing. The second ingredient is hops. This is a flower from the hop plant. It adds bitterness, it adds tropical flavors. Basically, most of the flavors that you wouldn't associate with sweet and malty come from hops. The third ingredient is yeast. That's what ferments the sugar in the beer, creating carbon dioxide and alcohol. Carbon dioxide is why beer is bubbly. And then the fourth ingredient is water. Water is 95% of all beer. The chemical makeup of water is very important to the finished product. Yeah.
Perfect. And so with those two inputs on the solid and the water side, what do the chemical processes and just the natural process of it all, how does that create the waste byproduct that we see with beer?
So beer is a very water-intensive product. Generally, the calculation is it takes about 9 to 13 gallons of water to produce 1 gallon of beer. Some of the ways that we save on that is we recirculate our cold liquor. So in brewing, liquor is just a fancy term for water. We have our cold liquor tank, which at the end of the boiling process, we need to quickly cool down the beer. So we run it through a heat exchanger. The cold water going in becomes hot water coming out. We recycle that into our hot liquor tank. We can capture a little bit of that energy that we spent to boil the beer, goes back into our hot liquor tank. We aren't sending that water down the drain. As far as the solid side of things, the spent grain, so when the mash is done and we've drained all the liquid out, we have grain that still has some sugar, some starch to it. We send that to a local farmer and he feeds it to cattle. So that's how we save on the solid side of things.
Awesome. And does 100% of your spent grain go to the farmer?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
Every batch of beer goes to our farmer.
Okay, perfect. And so, I don't know if you know this, but does the chemical makeup and nutritional value of the spent grain help? Why is it so beneficial for farmers to use that?
So the spent grain for us has been depleted of most of the sugar that we find useful in the brewing process. The leftover grain still has starch, still has enough nutrients that farmers can feed it to their cattle. And when you talk to him, he talks about how the cattle come running on grain day. They know they have a special treat coming each week.
Awesome. And so you've talked a little bit about the innovative practices to minimize waste overall that I think a lot of breweries implement. Is there anything unique to Bull City that you all use to minimize?
So for us being a small brew pub, we don't have the luxury of being able to afford really nice, expensive equipment. We do what we can. Like I said, before we even opened, we designed this system to recapture hot water. What else do we do? Yeah, you'll have to give me a minute on that one. Ask me the question again.
Yeah. And so I guess alongside that, talking about being a smaller brew pub, do you have any advice that you would give to other breweries that are looking to get into this industry? You said you've had 13 years of experience, and so is there anything unique that you've come across that you'd like to share about sustainability or environmental practices if you have anything?
Yeah, so the recycling the grain is probably the biggest thing you can do. It's the easiest thing you can do. Farmers are always looking for spent grain. Breweries are always looking for an easy way to get rid of spent grain. Find a local farmer and make a partnership with them. It works out great for both parties involved. Yeah.
Great. And so if you weren't to donate the spent grain, what would happen with it? Would it go into water supply?
Some of it would probably go into the water supply. The majority of it would be what we would have to put into the dumpster. And there's a whole litany of legalities regarding that. We would actually have to pay extra to send it to the landfill. So yeah, working with a farmer is win-win-win.
much spent grain is produced in one batch of beer?
So it depends.
So,
Yeah.
why don't you have Kaya ask the question?
Okay.
and
Yes. Yep.
Speak to Kaya.
Yep.
What did,
How much spent grain?
how much spent grain is produced when you make a batch?
So it depends on the batch of beer. Lower alcohol beers use less grain. Lower alcohol beers use less grain. So it ranges anywhere from 300 to 900 pounds of grain. Yep, and the farmer can take all that and more. He's hungry for grain.
How do you select what type of grain you're going to be using for each beer?
So barley is malted into several different stages. Every batch of beer has what's called a base malt, and that is what provides the majority of the starches that are then converted into sugars. We then move on to specialty malts. They are kilned to different degrees, which will kill some of the enzymes in there, but it will give us a whole range of flavors using the Maillard reaction, which is caramelizing the sugars to different degrees. So if we go a little ways, we can get some caramel notes. We can get toffee, butterscotch. If we keep going, we can get on into coffee, roasted character. So it depends on the batch of beer. Right now, we have a golden ale, which is our base malt, and another low kilned malt, so it ends up being very light. We've got our brown lager on, which uses a little bit of what's called Munich malt. It gives it a nice toasty brown color, gives a nice rich character. And then we have our Baltic Porter, which is a very big beer. That was actually over 900 pounds of grain that we used. And it has an array of chocolate malt, dark roasted malt, and it's a porter. It's got a deep, rich character. It's got all that toasty, burnt flavor. Yeah.
Very cool. So, on that side of things, are there any chemical or enzyme processes that go into the water that you then have to filter out? I know you've talked about your circular water filtration, but instead of on the solid side, what do you do to remediate, or what's the process on that side?
So what we dump down the drain, we try and minimize the solids that go through there. At the end of the batch of beer, there is a small amount that goes down the drain. When we first opened up, I contacted the City of Durham Water Department and told them we were opening a brewery. We were the second brewery in town at that time, so my concern was the amount of chemicals and the amount of solids we'd be sending down. When I talked to them 13 years ago, I got a really nice talk with him about how proud he was of his bugs and how they can take care of whatever small amount of stuff we send down. So in the grand scheme of the city, we're sending a very small amount of solids and chemicals down, and the water department is very proud of how they can handle what we send to them.
Great. And do you know, since it has been 13 years with the growth of the brewery industry in this area, has that changed at all, or?
There's definitely more going down. I would say, given the number of breweries and the size of their brew houses, I would not imagine that that's drastically affected the water department at all.
You've answered most of my questions. I think lastly, I just have a personal question for you. So what made you decide to go into the beer making industry?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, when I was 17, I started homebrewing with my dad, and that was a great time. I enjoyed that. I continued it on into college, and then one of the really transformative events for me, I did a semester in Germany, and one night I went out by myself. I was determined that I was going to speak German the entire night. So I went to a little bar, ordered beer in German, and there was this old guy sitting next to me, and he turned to me and immediately pegged me as an American, so he started speaking English to me. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm here to speak German. So I somewhat belligerently replied to him in German, and he replied back in English. We ended up having a conversation the entire night, bilingual conversation, him practicing English and me practicing German. Yeah, turns out he's a World War II vet. It was a very interesting conversation, and it's something that I don't think I would have experienced if it hadn't been for beer. So it was one of those moments that I realized that beer is, a great social lubricant. It's a great unifying thing. And that's when I think kind of the first kernels of I want to do something with my life involving beer started.
That's great. And so, following that, is there anything else that you think that we should know about beer, the brewery, yourself?
I could talk for hours on beer if you wanted me to. Not without specific direction. I can talk to you about the process if you want. If you want, not specifically geared towards sustainability, but we've gone through up until the boil. I can take you through the rest of it if you want.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. So after we boil, we run it through the heat exchanger. That's where we swap waters.
You're good.
Yeah. Give me a second. Okay. So after the boil, we run it through the heat exchanger, which is where we recapture a little bit of the energy that we spent boiling the water. We pump it into one of our fermenters. Along the way, we run it through the heat exchanger to quickly drop the temperature. We want to get it to the right fermentation temperature as quickly as possible, and then add our yeast. We do this because we don't want to give any wild yeast or wild bacteria a foothold, a chance to start propagating themselves. So then we pump it into the fermenters. Depending on what beer we're brewing, it'll take anywhere from 2 to 8 weeks. If we're brewing a lager, lagers ferment more quickly. They take 2 to 3 weeks, so the process will be done by then. If we're brewing a lager, it takes 6 to 8 weeks. Once fermentation is complete, we do what's called crashing. We drop the temperature, which essentially puts the yeast to sleep. The yeast drops down the cylindrical tank. The design of the tank is really nice because it collects all of the yeast at the bottom. We can then harvest that and recycle that into subsequent batches, saving on the cost of buying new yeast. Once we've crashed, we run it through the filter. This clarifies it, pump it into our serving tanks, and from there it goes all of 60 feet from our serving tanks to the tap. So we have some of the freshest beer available.
Wow. Okay, so what is your favorite beer and why?
I really like our lagers. So one of the nice things about being in a brew pub is we have the luxury of time. We aren't a production facility. We aren't looking at maximizing production. So we can play around with some of these beers that take 3 to 4 times as long to brew. Lagers they're a nice crisp beer. If you think about Pilsners, if you think about Pilsners, I'm thinking about Pilsners. So Pilsners, we've got Box. There's a small number of beers that fall under the lager category. Those are my favorite beers to drink, and therefore they are my favorite beers to brew.
That's great. One, just like last question,
Mm-hmm.
what makes, in your head, Bull City a unique brewery, and what makes you want to work here?
So the thing that initially attracted me to Bull City Bourbon Brewery is the fact that we focus on traditional, true to style beers. So we brew everything from German Pilsners, we brew English style bitters. We are a small brewery. We get to experiment. Every year we brew 48 to 50 different styles of beer. Again, this is one of the benefits of being in a brew pub. We aren't focused on production. We aren't focused on selling what the most popular beer at the moment is. We do play with some hazy IPAs, but for the most part, we like brewing traditional beers. Yep, that's what I like. That's what I like to drink. That's what I like to brew.
Okay, I think that's it from us. Thank
Great.
you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Turn off this thing too. I don't know. There we are. Let's see. Does that make any visible difference?
Is it good?
That I would normally check on it. We'll give it probably 10-20 more minutes to clear up. And then
Well,
as
this is- Bigger thing.
all right.
Like a lift gate that we can put it on and it'll raise up. We used to have to do it all by hand, so it'd take like 3 of us to like lift the whole thing.
Okay. Wow. Does he dry it out before?
Okay. Hold it up there. Just hold it. Hold it there. Keep looking at it. Keep looking. Take it away. Don't pour it yet. Good. You're gonna pour. Where are you gonna pour it? In there. All right,
Yep.
hang on. Please. Sorry. Anytime.
So we are done with the transfer. There's just a small amount of liquid left in.
Could you look at that again, please?
Yes, of course. I'm going to do it a couple more.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Hang on 1 second. Okay. Close it up.
All right. So he's going to spray out the rest. It might
Okay.
get splashy. So
Okay, I'll get out.
all right.
Thank you. You gotta say what's on it.
Oh.
Put it back in. What's on it?
Brewery sustainability interview, Tim Perry, take 2.
Thank you.
All right, we're good to go?
We're getting there. Okay, well. Slate again, please. Stand by. Slate.
Brewery sustainability interview, Tim Cools, take 2.
There we go.
We're good.
All right. So Tim, you can go off by like starting your name or stating your name, stating what you do, and what you would like to be known by.
Sure. So my name is Tim Cools. I am head barley grower here at Perry Farms, and it's a self-proclaimed title that I've given myself. But basically what I do here is help out with the malting grains that we grow for brewing and distilling here on the farm. So we have many customers that use our end product, but my primary customer is Epiphany Craft Malt in Durham, North Carolina.
Awesome.
Tim, I know it's challenging. I'm shooting so tight, and if you start doing this,
Oh, sorry.
I can follow you a little bit.
I'll stay put.
Yeah, thank you. That looks great.
So Tim, what grains do you farm here, and has this operation always been about grain farming for you, or has it been a transition into that?
So we're a traditional North Carolina tobacco farm, and what that means is tobacco was a cash crop for us for many, many years. And cover crops like wheat and barley were used in the off-season when tobacco wasn't being grown on the farm. We've transitioned away from tobacco more and more, and so now we grow primarily wheat, barley, and rye for various different uses in feed, flour, and brewing and distilling too.
And you said that this is a family operation for you. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So Perry Farms started 1876. We're the 6th generation, my wife Jenna and I, and we've been farming continuous operation for over 100 years.
And the farming practices here, you've explained that you kind of alternate through different crops. Can you tell us a little bit about what crops you alternate through, why, and what's the benefit for the health of your operation?
Sure. So we utilize a variety of crops in rotation, from small grains to legumes, and essentially row crop farming incorporates different crops for different seasons. And the idea is that you don't over farm one crop over and over again. So that rotation is healthy for not only the crop itself, but also for the soil health, which is important. So by preventing insects and diseases from recurring, providing that variety, we're able to utilize nature to help us succeed as a farmer. The crops that we grow in rotation are soybeans, small grains, and tobacco as well. And that allows us to have enough diversity in the crops so that we can grow successfully and sustainably here. Some of the sustainability practices that we use are things like no-till farming or low tillage, reduced tillage farming. And that just allows us to maintain soil health and viability and restore the natural soil health back into the ground.
Yeah, and you mentioned the nitrogen cycle and that fixing process, which is something that obviously is very important for plants, so I'd love if I could hear a little bit more about that.
Sure. So by balancing a crop rotation, you're able to essentially deliver the nutrients back into the soil depending on what your goals are. So when you use, say, growing a small grain, you're depleting nitrogen from the ground. And so we use that legume rotation to fixate nitrogen back into the soil with things like soybeans, cover crops, clover, and things like that. So that allows you to reduce your synthetic inputs by using nature to restore those inputs that you deplete naturally through the growing cycle.
Any question about that. Yeah, the wind. Oh, the wind. Call the wind Mariah. There's something outside. All right. Let's go. Good.
So last question.
Yeah.
Okay. So the nitrogen fixing cycle, very important, very interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about the crops that you have here and how you alternate them to?
Beep beep.
Okay. Tim, can you tell us a little bit more about the nitrogen cycle and how the crops that you use here and plant here benefit the soil and the fertility health of your operation?
Sure. So farmers use best practices in their crop rotation to do various different things that reduce the inputs involved. So we use nature to restore nitrogen back into the soil with legumes, which are nitrogen fixing. And we follow that up in a rotation with small grains, which will deplete the nitrogen from the soil. So various different crop rotation tactics are used in order to reduce the need for things like synthetic fertilizers.
And in terms of the grain operation that you have here, how did you get into that field and how did you find yourself being this source for local brewing operations?
Oh, so great question. So I started in agriculture through my father-in-law, Ronnie Perry, and my wife, Jenna. And essentially, I wanted to contribute in some way to the family farm. We're the 6th generation family farming operation, and I don't have an agricultural background. So I came into it very excited about the outdoors, getting my hands dirty and wanting to contribute in a good way. And one of my passions is home brewing, so brewing beer at home. And that was the avenue for me to participate in the family business, was to grow small grains for malting purposes, which then get used for brewing and distilling. So that's the way that I got involved here in the family farm.
Great. In terms of the grain itself in the brewing operation, maybe you can tell us a little bit about its journey from soil to the beer that you drink.
Sure. So the grain that we grow here, this is 2-row winter barley, which means that it's a particular type of barley that's grown for uniform kernel size. It overwinters, so it goes dormant in the colder months, and then we harvest in May. The reason why barley is so popular with brewing is because it's really the only grain that comes prepackaged with all the enzymes that are required in the brewing and fermentation process. You can use other grains like wheat and rye, which are very common components of brewing, but barley is the one thing that really has the total package. And so what we'll do is we'll harvest the grain in May, we'll clean and store the grain for the malt house, we'll package it and send it to the malt house, which is about 40 miles away in Durham. That'll go through a process called malting, and they'll germinate the grain, converting the starches to the sugars that yeast can use to convert those sugars into things like CO2 and alcohol, brewing beer. And so that journey, it really takes place over several months in growing, but then from the malting to the brewing process, one thing that we're able to do locally is control the time from field to glass. And so the freshness of product is really important for us, and being able to deliver a high quality product that consumers enjoy is important for brewers, and that means it's important for us too. So that process is really something we've been enjoying growing together locally, with collaborations like the malt house and the brewer and the farmer back to here.
Yeah, and getting into that a little bit, that circularity that we see between these farmers and these brewers, and even the farmers that are receiving like spent grain from the breweries, how has that relationship been symbiotic for all people involved, and can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, if you think about it, we're not really doing anything new and different. What we're doing is we're going back in time, when agriculture was much more community based and much more circular in nature, local, and taking advantage of the growing conditions of the region and the products that you can produce on a commercial scale within the region. And so we're kind of taking a step backwards in time and getting closer to the market by growing grains that are used here in brewing and distilling in our area. And so while it sounds really great and forward thinking, we're just going backwards in time a bit. And for us, the journey is exciting because we can get closer to the consumer, we can get closer to the end user, and that's not typical of modern agriculture. When you're delivering to a grain elevator, for example, and you don't really know what the end product is or where it's going, here we can look and we can touch and feel and participate in the process in a great way, which really exciting for us in this emerging North Carolina craft beer economy that we're growing together.
And what would you say, or maybe some of the biggest challenges that local farmers are facing when it comes to this industry, and how do you think that people can really bridge those?
So the big challenge for farmers accessing a market like craft beer, for example, is that that accessibility to malting. There's historically big malt operations in the High Plains and the Dakotas and Canada, where a lot of commercial malt is produced. And so the tie for us to the brewery is that malt house concept. And recently there's 3 North Carolina craft malt houses that have opened, and that's really bridged the gap between farm to brewery. And so that's the thing that I think that has really made a difference for us in overcoming the challenge of access in the craft brewing industry. Some other challenges that we have, of course, are more modern challenges like development, for example, and encroachment of urbanization into agriculture here in our little slice of North Carolina. So that challenge is a little bit different, but still a big one for us here locally.
Absolutely. And what advice would you give to someone who is maybe trying to enter this industry, whether that be on the farming side of things or in the brewery side of things?
My advice would be that don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to try something new and different, as unconventional as it might be. I'm probably one of the only New York-born North Carolina tobacco farmers you'd ever meet, and so I would encourage people to look at agriculture as an opportunity for their career. There's a lot of really neat and exciting things going on with technology and advancements in agricultural practices that really make it an enjoyable profession to pursue. As far as brewing goes, I mean, what's more fun than getting involved in a brewing career? I think that's something that really is exciting for a lot of people, and North Carolina is one of the best places in the country to really participate in a great way in craft beer.
And I guess lastly, I would just love to hear what your favorite part of your job is.
Can we hold off? Yeah, here we go.
Actually, before we transition to the end, I would love if you could kind of define what the malt house is for the people listening, and maybe kind of give us an excerpt of your experience with the malt houses that you work with and how they've helped you.
Okay, so let's see. Let me think of where to thread that through. Should I talk a little bit about malting, the process itself,
Yeah.
what that is?
Not in any great detail,
Okay.
because you already did, actually.
Okay.
But I think what we want to know is where does a malt house fit between the growing of the barley and
Okay.
the brewing of the beer?
Okay. So interestingly, the grain that's grown here in the field is not directly usable by the breweries. There's a process in the middle called malting. And that process is really important because without the malting process, essentially you're just making oatmeal, raw grains steeped in water. And so the malt house really provides the brewers a product that they can use, converting the raw grains into malt and providing that enzyme package for yeast to consume and produce beer. The way that it fits for us is that is our access to the brewing industry. It really is the malt house, and by collaborating with partners, that's how we can be a contributing partner for breweries across the state and the region.
And you can say, if you want, partners like Epiphany,
Okay.
if you want.
Yeah, no, that's true. They are the malt house that we work with. So partners in partnering with the malt house like Epiphany Craft Malt, they've given us access to not only the brewing industry but also education about what's important for malting grains. What are the quality requirements and what are the things that brewers really need in the grain that we grow. Because if we don't grow a quality product that they can use, then it's really limiting our ability to access that market. So the malt house really is not only a partner, but also a real educator and really expanding the market for farmers like us.
Do you have any other questions, guys?
Okay. So
Well,
wait
I-
one second. Ezra's got a final question.
Yeah, I have a final question.
There's
I
always a final
just
question.
personally want to know what you love about your job. I find like the whole industry of farming and agriculture is something that's very overlooked in our society, and I just like want to know. Tell us about what you look forward to when you come to work every day, and how it's been rewarding for you.
Yeah, so what I like the most about farming and agriculture in general is the sense of community, the sense of place, and the history and the story that each field has out here. You know, going down the highway 65 miles an hour and seeing the open land, every single piece of open land has a history to it. And as a farmer, I think it's important for us to be good stewards of that land, maintain the open space that we enjoy as a community, and find ways to continue and sustain the benefits of land use in agriculture. For me, the most rewarding thing is knowing that we're playing a small role in environmental sustainability and contributing to the overall health and wellness of the environment. And so I think to be a good steward of the land is the most exciting thing for me every day.
Great.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great.
Start the tab. Start recording. Yeah, right over here. Tell me when, but I'm gonna do it. So.
Actually, wide angle was.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. Okay, yeah, we're ready now. Okay, you're good.
I will always trying to be nice. I will always. Like my dad comes in here and I'm like, I'm actually. I appreciate it. Tell me when.
Alright, you're good now. Thanks.
Not the bar, you know. Yeah, all of it. One in October, I mean, most of the business really being at kids. So there are a bunch of
You definitely didn't want that on that scene. You should have seen the rims on that car. La verdad, yo estaba hablando con él para que me diga que se me está chingando y perdonar ahorita le diré que no baja ahí igual. Hay cambio de plan, me llama maluco. Yo
Should we get one for like the
voy a pedir que tira.
I agree. I do, because I feel like I have, well, yeah. But you read like nonfiction, right? I read like nonfiction. In addition to my, like, the internet is bad books. Just my back. Yeah,
I feel like he might. It's only because he might notice that it's you.
that's why I feel like
Spanish, so you feel like I'm just
that's why I always like listen to that. Like, I'll do it when I drive.
Do you think I could try a little bit of the nearly lost? I mean, whichever.
Can I get 8 ounce of the nearly lost stew?
There are 3 wheats. I don't know why I want this. What is that, the wheat beer? Or the wheat beer? Or the...
Ultimately, still wait a time, but
Not my buddies. Oh, this is pretty good.
yeah, I'm gonna make that 2 of those. This is the little medium as well. The vibes are not matching.
We're living the dream.
Sorry, I'm just
You're
we're
good.
getting the dream like that.
I know.
Your eyes look really pretty in this light.
That's good. Because I'm on
Is that sort of conjuring look?
Great, it was an excellent pour.
Oh, yeah, that's... Keep it open? Yeah, they told me to come on this. Must be phone before.
I work at the UNC Environmental Finance Center as a project director.
Okay, so first I am just going to have you state your name and how long you've been working here and all that.
Yeah, so my name is Justin Nolan. I'm a project director here at the UNC Environmental Finance Center. I'm going on 2 years now, about a year and a half.
Awesome. And what do you do in your role at the EFC currently?
All kinds of stuff. So we primarily work with water utilities. That's kind of the focus of most of what we do here. There's a connection of almost every piece of work that we do here to water utilities. So a lot of what we do is helping them pursue funding. We also work with them on just like guidance and education. A lot of it's financial, but also kind of managerial, so stuff with workforce development. And we do big research projects. So like we're doing a research project for the Appalachian Regional Commission on basically capacity in the Appalachian Mountains for water. But so some combination of research, communication, and education.
Awesome. And how does your specific role and work relate to breweries currently?
Okay, so breweries sit at this interesting nexus for a lot of the small towns and the small town utilities we work with, as they are like a crucial economic development potential for a lot of these small towns, but they also have potential for significant impact on water supply. So we got into that business because of that interconnectivity. We appreciate the extent at which they are capable of being like a community center for these towns, but we also worry about their impact.
And can you talk a little bit about said impact, some of the main ways that breweries have environmental impacts?
Yeah, well, so it kind of falls into two main categories. On the one side, it's the amount of water used, which can be kind of a mixed thing in North Carolina. We have a decent amount of water, so that can be more of a problem nationally. A lot of breweries, you're looking at 6, 8, 10 barrels of water for every barrel of beer. A lot of breweries are working extensively on improving that, which is someplace that we try to help. The other side of the impact is they release a lot of oxygen-demanding biosolids into water when they produce beer. In general, you talk to anybody who's in the utility business, they talk a whole lot about dissolved oxygen, significance of DO, dissolved oxygen. Water needs to remain a certain level of oxygenated at all times to prevent like fish kills and any number of other things. The stuff that comes out of a brewery is intensive, can be oxygen intensive. And so anything that we can do to help breweries kind of reduce the stuff that they put out, use it in other ways, or even facilitate the cool stuff that they're already doing, all of that helps everybody in the water utility world as well.
Okay, sounds good. And what are some of the challenges that breweries face when implementing these said sustainability measures?
I mean, obviously, first and foremost is money. It's been a mixed time for breweries. North Carolina went through a giant expansion, hundreds of breweries, and they're still growing, but we're probably somewhere close to the cap. Sustainable breweries across the state, I think they face a lot of trials and tribulations that any small entrepreneur is going to deal with. But breweries in particular deal with certain kinds of regulations, and again, their relationship with water utilities can either be really fruitful for them or almost combative. So breweries ultimately are going to struggle if we're just trying to make ends meet, we're just trying to remain a profitable business, it can be difficult to be like, okay, in addition to that, we're also going to seek out ways to, put out less stuff into the water supply or team up with a farm to, put our biosolids in that direction. That kind of stuff is like all extra. It's all the stuff you get to do once your business is running up, and to some extent, it can be very difficult when you're wearing a lot of hats, especially if you're a small brewery, to kind of do that work.
And so you mentioned the biosolid aspect and the water aspect. So what are breweries currently that you're aware of? What are a lot of the initiatives that they're taking to try to reduce that impact on the utilities?
I mean, one of the biggest ones is just, like I said, a lot of like trub and other biosolids get repurposed either in fertilization processes or in feed. There's a lot of breweries who will have really solid partnerships with agriculture to redistribute the stuff that's coming out, so it never goes into the water supply. That's one thing you can do. The other side of that, and this is kind of the like, you're a fancier brewery, you have more money side of that, is pretreatment. So, you see a lot of the, more higher end craft breweries that have a lot of extra money, kind of pre-treating, building their own wastewater treatment basically on campus to pre-treat the water they put out so that what the actual water utility gets has already been treated once. Those are two of the bigger, more common strategies.
Okay, thank you. And so with your position at the EFC, how do you personally, or the EFC in general, in North Carolina, help these breweries implement some of this work?
So a lot of it's just, again, we go back to that conversation we just had about, if you're a person wearing a lot of hats already, you don't have a lot of time, right? And a lot of this stuff comes down to research and precedent, right? A brewery is way more likely to implement a solution that they see played out in another brewery or something very similar, maybe a distillery. And this is because it's a lot less mental work. It's a lot less, trying to figure out how to custom fit a solution. If you just give them pure, one size fits all industry stuff, it's not as helpful. So anything we can do to come in and be like, okay, this is, a really interesting solution that they're using in Maine. This is a really interesting solution they're using in Maryland. This is a really interesting solution they're using in California. Maybe you didn't know about that. This is how you implement that. Everything that we can do to remove the barriers, the time barrier, the money barrier. So sometimes it is helping them find funding. USDA and REAP grants, things like that, provide breweries with ways to find any sustainable solutions. There's sustainable funding money out there. It can be hard to track down, and anybody who's ever written a grant can tell you that grant writing in and of itself is a giant disaster. So we can help breweries on that front. So it's a combination of education, funding, and again, just facilitation. Anything I can do to make it easier. That might mean introducing you to somebody who's already done it, putting you in the same room so that you guys can converse and kind of pick brains off each other. Or maybe it's something where we do a webinar, or we do a full-on educational outpiece. We do a presentation at a giant brewery convention. Everything in between.
Okay, very cool. And so when you do these educational or just more hands-on technical assistant work, have you noticed changes within North Carolina so far with breweries?
Yeah, but it is slow coming. So one thing that the EFC is trying to work on right now and trying to improve on is kind of more bespoke solutions for breweries. So our first round of P2, we kind of came at it with those kind of industry solutions. The more we've gotten further into the work, the more we've realized that doesn't always work. A solution that works for a multi-million-dollar giant factory doesn't necessarily sync up for a one-man operation brewery, right? And so we are now kind of refitting the work that we do to be more targeted. What we've noticed is when we give those really specific targeted solutions that are kind of custom to that brewery, then we have seen a lot of move. And the reality is that breweries as an industry, you'll be amazed. This is one of the most environmentally friendly, environmentally focused, hardworking communities of people in all of existence. Every brewery we've talked to is doing something. Every brewery we've talked to is trying. And it's just those barriers we talked about. So a lot of it is just that barrier removal process.
And can you just define what P2 is and a little bit of how that ties in?
Yeah, absolutely. So P2 is pollution prevention. It's a grant from the EPA, largely to reduce source point pollution. So basically the EPA is trying to pivot from cleaning up things that already happened into a more proactive deal with them before they become problems. So that could be reducing the amount of electricity being used. That could be reducing harmful chemicals. That's a big focus of our next round. It could be water usage and water pollutants. It's anything that's going to go in, catching it at the source, right? So they basically give out money to organizations like our own to do this kind of work of helping. It's more of a carrot than a stick organization. Instead of fining you, we're going to try to give you as much information, and that really syncs up with the EFC and the greater School of Government's kind of academic mission of we're going to educate you, we're going to make sure you know what you can do, and then trust you to make the right decision going forward. So that's kind of where we're at with what P2 is for us. But it doesn't just work with breweries, it's any industry. And there's a current focus on food. It's one of the big 5 focuses of the program, food and beverage, but that is not a permanent thing.
And so you talked a little bit in the beginning of the economic advantages of breweries. Are you noticing a trend of more breweries coming into the state, or just trends in general of, I know we talked about, sustainability initiatives with, they are, it's slow moving, but they are happening. Most breweries want that to happen. Is there any form of, when a new brewery is established, is there any form of like immediate remediation on the environmental side with so many coming in to the state, or?
Elaborate what you mean by remediation.
I guess when they build a brewery, is there, now that we are in a time of, okay, breweries are getting a little bit more educated on this aspect, especially in North Carolina, is there like, what is normally the first step that they take to remediate any form of?
Yeah, so I think what's interesting is that, again, we talked about like precedent, other breweries doing it, the ground being retread again. So what I have noticed quite a lot of is when new breweries set up, there's so much existing literature and there's so much existing best practice for them that it takes less time for them to like build these relationships with agriculture. Like it's a known thing that farms want your offsets, the things that you produce as a result of making your product. It's a known thing that you can't put certain things into the water supply. So that's the one side of that coin, is that I do think the amount of time it takes a brewery to go from, we have no idea how to reduce our impact, to, oh, we know exactly how to reduce our impact, is much quicker than it would have been 10, 15 years ago. I do think that there are certain gold standards that some breweries are always going to have trouble hitting, like Sierra Nevada, breweries like that are literally recollecting the water off their own parking lot. That's a very difficult star to hit. But because there's just this giant body of information out there of little things that you can do, that's where there's a lot of movement. I will say the other side of this coin, which is kind of unfortunate, is that if that sort of thing can't be reached, some towns just can't actually make it work with the brewery. So, when the brewery comes into the town and says, we want to set up here, the towns and the water utility are going to look at capacity issues. And if they know what the brewery is going to produce and they don't feel like they can treat it, that really sucks. So anything that we can do to make it easier for breweries to set up in those towns, the better.
Okay. And what are some of the hurdles to being able to treat some of the brewery waste? I know you talked a little bit about Trub and the actual reclamation of water, but are there specifics that you know of that makes it really difficult for small utilities to be able to treat that?
Well, on a very basic level, a water treatment facility is only approved to treat X amount of wastewater in a given day, and on a very basic level, just a brewery coming in, again, trying to take advantage of the fact that this is a good space for us to find property that we can afford and space that we can actually do our stuff. I mean, the rural community is ideal for that, but a lot of rural utilities have very small wastewater treatment facilities that are not approved for enormous numbers. So that can be one big issue, is just literally your exceeding our capacity. Further that, in some cases, it's just the biosolids. It's the amount of oxygen demand that is created by specifically what comes out of a brewery typically, just the byproducts of producing alcohol or producing beer specifically can create those issues. And so if your wastewater treatment facility is 28, 30 years old, 35 years old, I mean, you're getting into the North Carolinian and national crisis of aging infrastructure for wastewater treatment facilities. But a lot of small town America is barely holding on to the stuff that they're currently treating. So you add this really complex, really oxygen demanding byproduct into that already, and that's where things can go out of whack. And that's where organizations like us and the work that breweries do on their own really comes in to square that circle, because the town desperately wants that economic development. So,
okay, thank you. You answered most of my questions. I guess just lastly, do you have anything else that we should know about this industry, your work, breweries, water, anything else that you feel like you haven't covered that we should know?
I mean, not tremendously. Just I think it's important to straight that of all the industries we could work with, we're really blessed to work with the brewing community. Again, there's enormous motivation, there's enormous sincerity, and a lot of these guys and gals are environmentalists in their hearts, and they want to do this work. As we move forward, we'll be looking more at the chemical usage, and working in that capacity. And a lot of breweries are really excited to talk to us about like what better chemicals can we use, what cleaner chemicals can we use. So I think the passion is there. It's just a matter of people coming in and kind of squaring circles for them.
Okay. Very cool. What time are we at?
It's 1:25.
Okay, perfect. I think that's it from us.
Word.
Thank you very much. That was perfect.
They get by with just filtration to remove what yeast they can. It's either a filtration, like a filter like you find in your car for like oil filters, something like that. Or they do a, we just use a filter.
Yeah.
Prohibitive from a sustainability standpoint. It's all driven by the other like alcohol and liquor distributors who are trying to control the point of sale. Anyway, COVID really made returning people's used stuff unpleasant.
Oh, that's cute.
And then
hot wet grain. Makes a big difference. You said you guys did the blue. Could have cleaned your truck out a little bit, I guess. And I apologize for the foreign tomorrow too. It's not great.
No problem.
It's okay. They're not all manicured and beautiful. Is this the only brewery you're doing?
We're doing one tomorrow too.
Okay.
Steel String in Carborough, but their farm out, their Pluck Farm location. Yeah.
This has to weigh down the truck a little bit.
I think it's really neat how they come up with different flavors. They didn't leave me much room out here on the corner today. What'd you do today?
Batch of pale ale.
I didn't hear from Chris today, so I don't know. Maybe, I don't know, he does a big batch, maybe that guy's something, I don't know. We just had a small batch last week. Okay. I may just be the batch. All right.
I don't know if there's a good way to do that, but
So when Natalie's ready, maybe you could just
like pick some
put
up.
your hand in and just kind of show it to the camera.
sure, of course.
I'm ready. Yep.
Okay. I don't know if that works.
And then if you could do that and then take your hand away after all the seeds go out of your hand.
Okay.
I'd like the double hands because that
Oh, okay.
that-
Do you mind doing that one more time?
Yeah.
Sorry.
wait, 1 second until Natalie gets ready. And,
Oh, I am.
Good.
and so, but if you would start with your hands outside of the bag.
Like this?
Tim?
Yeah. Or up close.
No, I mean with holding nothing in your hands.
Oh,
So in other words, I want to get your hands coming into the frame and your hands going out of the frame.
sounds good. Okay. My mom would be so proud. She always wanted to be the hand model.
And then one more where your hands aren't in the frame, basically by your side, and when Natalie gives you the head.
All right. We harvest into that truck, or that truck. So from the combine, we dump it into this.
waiting for the sun to come out. You can talk and I'll...
And then don't look at the camera, of course.
Okay. So just anywhere around here?
Yep.
Do you want to do it? Do you want to drop it?
Sure.
Like hold it, drop it?
Yeah, I could do that.
Alright, give me one more.
Pretty good. But it'd be nice to have a little bit of motion in it.
See if I can get a little deeper. Okay, ready?
Yep.
Everybody get over here, please. Everybody get over here. Thank you.
The water level on this gauge right here, can you tell me where it's at? It might be right behind that ring. That's it for now. Now we wait.
It's perfect. Great. Thank you so much. Great, thanks.
These can blanks come to us just with blank aluminum. We have to hand label them. And then we give them a rinse in some clean water. Make sure any sort of like dust from the manufacturer is off. And then I give them a quick soak in some food grade sanitizer. Ensure that the beer that we put in there will stay fresh, won't spoil. In case there's any wild yeasts in the air. We don't pasteurize our beer or anything like that. Most of that stuff is. Most breweries that you find in your local neighborhood don't. They get by with just filtration to remove.
It does. So this step takes at least 40 minutes. Between 30 and 40 minutes, we'll see where we're at. Determine how much longer we need to go. There's a switch that I flipped up there, and that's just so we can assess how.
Can you close out and just open it up?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Good. Stand by. Anytime. this go on for a while?
Yep. Yeah. This will be the next 20 or 30 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, usually. Me.
Pretty sticky and it tries to boil over, which is why I'm spraying it down.
Okay.
After about 15 minutes, we'll reach a point which is called hot break, where most of those proteins and starches have been kind of broken down, and we'll start to add hops. I'm going to add a handful of hops right now. This bucket will go in about 9 minutes.
These they brought.
Oh, good, good.
This is good. What bucket are you going to put in?
Number one will go, yep.
Just warn me before you do it, please.
Okay.
I'll be right here.
All right.
Trying to be in your way as much as possible.
First 15 minutes, I can't walk away. There's always the threat of it boiling over, so I just stand here with a hose.
Okay.
That's Joseph and Ava.
Okay. We've got to get our.
We probably have more seats too. If you guys want more seats, but we also have buckets. If you want to sit on a bucket instead of on the ground.
We sat in grass yesterday.
Oh, okay. Well,
This is better than that. Yeah.
So were these all wine barrels at one time behind you, or?
Are they still wine?
some of them. The two at the top there were whiskey barrels, and then most of the other ones I think were all, yeah, they were all wine barrels.
Oh, actually, aren't wine barrels often whiskey barrels first, or which way does it go?
Usually whiskey barrels are, to be whiskey there are requirements that you can only use your barrel once. So whiskey barrels do get used for a lot of stuff, but not typically wine. But they get used for like rum, tequila, and
Port?
port might be, yeah. Wine barrels are a lot more specific on the toast levels, and then they keep those for.
Brewery sustainability interview, Will Isley.
So if you could just start by. So if you just wanted to start by stating your name and your position here.
Okay. And looking at you,
Yes,
not the camera.
not the camera.
Got it. My name is Will Isley, and I'm the head of brewing operations at Steel String Brewery.
How long have you been at Steel String?
So I was one of the founders. So we started in 2013 in Carborough, and I've been working here ever since. I was initially the main brewer, and now I head brewing operations. So just make sure that we have everything we need to brew, make sure brewing gets done on time, and it's coordinated with our sales staff and marketing, making sure all of our non-ingredient inputs are in place, and then I also am in charge of canning the beer. So.
Has Steel String always had a focus on sustainability, or is that a recent thing when you moved from your location in Carborough?
It's definitely something we always have strived for. So when we first started, we tried to use as much local malt as we could, which local malt was kind of hard to find initially. We started with Riverbend, which is in Asheville, and we've used Epiphany over in Durham as well, and now we use Carolina malt, which is from Kernersville, or outside of Kernersville. And yes, it's been a big part of what we want to do. We try to use as many local and foraged ingredients as we can in our sour beers. So we've used things like maypops, persimmon, muscadine, and pawpaws. Those are all native fruits to North Carolina. So it's been a big part of what we try to do, but it had been more challenging in Carborough than it is out here at our own facility. So.
The more you can look this way, the better. You can think and look,
Okay.
but come back.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is Will looking at any of the people on the right there, or is it mostly at you that he's looking at? Okay, yeah,
Just there, okay.
We're good, we're good.
Could you explain what the importance of using native ingredients in brewing is?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the main things we try to do is kind of have our own terroir where we are using our native ingredients because they're available and they're really good and they're really interesting and they're different. So we can have beers that we make here that are a lot different than beers you can get other places. So that's kind of the main driving force when we do choose local ingredients. But there's also, it's nice to support some of our local farmers. It's nice to support local agricultural distributors, like we work with Happy Dirt out of Durham a lot, and we buy B-grade stuff from them that we can use in our process, but maybe grocery stores are rejecting for different reasons. So it is about creating a sustainable agricultural model where we know that our money stays in this state, and we know that we're supporting people who are doing things that are good for the state's, both the economy and agricultural side of things.
How does it feel to work for a brewing operation that focuses on sustainability?
Very cool. When we get our best beers, I think, are our sour beers that use local ingredients. For instance, we've done one with a maypop and pawpaw beer that was probably one of my favorite beers we've made. And so if you haven't had a maypop before, it's a local passion fruit So it has a passion flower, this big purple flower, but it makes this little green fruit. And yeah, it basically tastes just like passion fruit, but it's grown right here. And then we add that with pawpaw, which is kind of like a custardy banana mango kind of mix, and is also a local ingredient. And yeah, that beer was just really cool and not something that you can get anywhere else. So it was very rewarding to make that, yeah.
And why do you think it's important that people choose craft beer rather than conventional, bigger beer businesses?
Yeah, that's a hugely important thing because we are, not only supporting other local farmers, other local businesses, but with the way that we treat our employees and the way that we, our hiring practices, our labor practices, they're all going to be better than people that are bigger, just by the nature of the bigger they are, the easier it is for them to, churn through employees and treat their labor force worse than we do. That's just how it works when they get bigger. And when you keep those dollars local, that helps us continue to invest in our people, continue to invest in our agricultural partners and everything like that. So it is something that we try to do, is to offer beers that, not only are we doing these sour beers that have local ingredients that are kind of challenging to people's palates, but we do also try to have some kind of beers that are as close as possible to what the bigger guys are making. So we have, leaned really heavily into doing lagers. We do Stone Away the Time is our Pilsner, which we just started doing when we came out here. And part of why we did it is because when we pulled our water test on our well, our water was very close to Pilsen water. So we actually don't add any water adjustments, which typically with brewing, you would be adjusting your water with things like calcium or sulfates to try and get a water profile that was similar to like a European city that you're trying to make a beer like. And since we already had basically Pilsen water coming out of our well, we started making a lot of different Pilsners. And so with Stowen, we kind of hit that middle ground of like, it's an extremely local product because it's got Carolina malt, and 100% of the grain bill is Carolina malt. It's got 100% our water from our wells with no additives. And then the flavor profile is very easy to approach. So it's something that if you've ever had beer before, you should like that beer. So I think that kind of brings everything in together of trying to get people to support craft beer, but we're also trying to meet people with what their tastes are and what we want. Want to make sure that we make it easy for people to enjoy craft beer.
And you mentioned the water inputs. What happens to the water during the brewing process and how much water is used? You guys have a very unique water management system after. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah. So like I said, we do have a well on site, so we pull all of our water from there. Once the water is in the system, right, that gets mixed with our grain, then that gets strained out and then boiled for about an hour and then we add hops. So that's like the main brewing process from a very wide view. Then it gets fermented for 2 weeks in one of our tanks with yeast, and then we push that over into what we call a bright tank, which is basically we're pulling it off of all the solids that kind of fall to the bottom of the other tanks, and then we carbonate it. And within each of those processes, we got to clean and sanitize all of our tanks. So we do have a lot of effluent or water discharge that comes out of our systems, and that all goes into our on-site treatment facility because we are a bona fide farm, so we're not tied into sewer with the county either. And we want to be really conscious about what we do with that water because we are really close. We're downstream, but right in the back of the property is where Cane Creek Reservoir is. So we're very close to a pretty major water source for Chapel Hill. And then downstream from us is also the Haw River, which is like one of the most polluted waterways in the whole country. So we've tried to be really conscious about what we do with our wastewater, which obviously a lot of other companies throughout history have not been very conscious about. So we have a 5-step process with our water treatment where it goes through essentially like a grease trap. It's basically a holding tank for the pH and the temperature to come down, and then we have a septic system And then we have a recirculation tank, which is basically we have it stirs up the sewage and then uses aerobic bacteria to break that down even further. And then we have 2 clarifying steps after that before it goes into our fields. And so we have, for our septic fields, we have basically twice the distance for all of that too, so that we're making sure that we don't have any huge discharges that are going to lead to any sediment running out and into our creek. Because we do have I think it's about 300 feet of creek and then a pretty big pond on site, which is not something that we use for our agricultural processes at this moment, but we do, I think, have plans to eventually use that pond for irrigating some of our crops.
So what is the role of the pond right now? Was that constructed by Stillshine?
No, that was actually here when we got here. And this property was originally, I think, just a tree farm. I'm not sure if it's ever been pasture, although we found some barbed wire fencing, which makes us think it might have been at some point. And then most recently it had been owned by a couple that was trying to encourage more like ground nesting birds. That was their big project. So they really left a lot of the fields alone, and they were part of when we bought the property from them was we promised that we would keep some of those fields intact, which we've done. So.
What is the level of water quality after all the purification steps?
We're pretty happy with our numbers right now. It does take time, so a few of our initial readings weren't right where we wanted them to, but I believe in our last report, our BOD was like 13, which is really good, and our pH, I believe, was like 6.7, which is pretty close to 7, which is kind of what our target wants to be. But most of what we put out with our beer effluent and with our inputs from the 2 toilets is pretty low pH. So we do have a pH adjustment step as well in there, and that's kind of what we're trying to do is make sure that we have low BOD and neutral pH.
What is BOD?
BOD is bioavailable oxygen. So basically a measurement of whether or not your effluent is going to have any microbes that may be harmful to humans. So you want that as low as possible to make sure you're not getting things like E. coli or salmonella into your system.
So the end result is essentially potable water that...
Not potable, it's still gray water. It still is technically considered sewage, or, but it is, so it's 6 feet underground, so it's irrigating our fields. So we don't water our fields, and these aren't, and also no food products are on those, but those are mostly for people to hang out in when they come out here, but we don't have to water them, which is nice.
That is really nice. Am I missing anything, guys?
Can you speak to? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Just ask about like the difference between like what we were talking about earlier with the irrigation system versus like spraying the water. Like, what's the impact there?
Okay, so yeah, for our system, we are underground irrigated, which is just a little bit better for the property as a whole, because we're not getting any kind of runoff, because like we said, with the pond and the creek, we want to try to limit the amount of clay silt that ends up in the waterway, which is kind of a big issue for both algal growth and just the quality of the water. And we can show some more to that, but we've built a couple of different natural wetland habitats. So we've basically tried to get the water to stop for a little bit, soak back into the ground, and then keep running. So when we built the facility, we had to, flatten a pretty large area. So a lot of clay did get disturbed, and we're trying to kind of see where we're getting too much runoff and fix some of that on that side too. But yes, so for irrigation, we do an underground system because it's a little bit better for that kind of thing. And then also, if you have any issues with your system, like if we have a beer that we're not happy with for whatever reason and we need to dump it, if we were to dump that on a system that was irrigated directly, it would just be more challenging. So we can get it into our system, which we know it's going to be in there for maybe a month before it really comes out, and make sure that it's getting treated by all of our healthy bacteria. Then we feel a lot better about that.
Is this treatment process required at all before you have, effluent coming out of your system? Like, how much of this is voluntary versus,
Right.
something mandated?
So through our process with working with DEQ on everything, it is required, but we kind of came to a compromise on what we wanted to do and what we considered our effluent to be. So I would say it wasn't 100% necessary that we do everything that we have done, but we want to make sure that what we're putting into the ground and what we are contributing to the waterway is as clean as possible. Obviously, with any of our sustainability measures and anything we do, there's no perfect solution. Obviously, building this facility in itself is damaging to the environment. When we boil our beer, obviously we're burning fossil fuel. So anything we can do to negate that in some way is what we're trying to do. So we do that with our solar panels for electricity. We do that with this irrigation system and water treatment, and with our choices on what kind of ingredients we use and how we're using this land.
How much of your electricity portfolio is coming from the solar versus conventional?
I believe in the summer, we're up to about 50%, and that goes down a little bit in the winter. You just have a little more cloud cover and shorter days. And then we have plans to try and expand that to 100%. But I think we installed those in 2021. Eric would know that more because he actually installed them. But.
And then I think I forgot to ask you this at the beginning of the interview, but if you could explain the relationship between Pluck Farms and Steel String,
okay,
that would be awesome.
Yeah, so Steel String, Eric, who's our head of farming operations, me, who's head of brewing operations, and Andrew is our third partner, and he's the head of operations overall. We started Steel String in 2013 in Carborough, and as we were looking to expand, starting in around 2016 and 2018, we decided that we wanted to go forward with being a farm brewery. And Eric had taken some classes, and he may have a degree, actually. I'll let him say if he has a degree in that, of sustainability agriculture at Central Carolina. And the more we looked into it, that was what we wanted to do. If we had a choice between finding like a warehouse facility that we could move into to just make more beer, or to really have a facility that we can grow our own inputs on, we can have the ability to do sustainability focused kind of building. So that's what we decided to do. And the farm, so Eric purchased the farm as Pluck Farm, and then we built the brewery on it. So the brewery is a tenant of the farm.
Awesome.
Okay.
Am I missing anything?
Did you ask Will to introduce himself and say what his title is?
I think I did that.
We did at the very beginning.
Did he? Okay, I missed that.
Just
Did he give his title in kind of short sentence?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, maybe just one question about waste circularity. Yeah, could you explain kind of Steel String's philosophy as far as circularity of ingredients and making a closed loop system?
Yeah, it's definitely something we strive for. Yeah, I don't think I mentioned we do also all of our compost grain, or all of our grain, once it's turned into beer, we either compost on site, which is what we do with about 30% of that grain, and then the rest of it goes to, there's an animal rescue that takes a good amount of it, and then there's a cattle farm that takes a pretty good amount of it. And initially we were composting all of that, so it took us a while to find some partners that we're sure will come every day, because if we can't get rid of the grain, we can't brew. So we have to make sure it's like always going to happen. And then we also had to find some people that understood that, so that grain that we do produce has been stripped of almost all of its sugar and all of its protein and fat and things like that. So it's not a particularly healthy source for cows. They do like it, and there is some calories in it. But as far as just making sure that the cows are also getting some kind of supplemental feed, that it can't replace what you're feeding. It can just kind of supplement and get the cows a little excited. They like when it's nice and warm and everything like that. So it's cool, but it took us a while to find somebody that we were sure was going to be able to take it, and we have now. And then with the compost, we have plans to keep expanding that. We've started, but I don't think we've gotten any compost out of, but some worm-based compost, and to do some worm castings and things like that. And we had initial plans to really do a fungal-based compost called Johnson Sioux, but that we ended up with the product that we're having, the product that we have, we just haven't been able to quite get that accomplished. But those are our plans for the future.
And what's the importance of composting rather than just letting those products go to the landfill at the end of it?
Yeah, and that's huge. And you know, I don't know many brewers that do put it into landfill, but I think it's allowed. And when we were out here, that was definitely something that was suggested, because in Carborough we used Compost Now, which picks up not only from a lot of Carborough businesses and Durham businesses, but they pick up from restaurants and things like that. But yeah, keeping that out of the landfill and making sure that it's, because essentially over the last 3 years when we've pulled compost out of here and we have a field, that grain is basically turned into almost no like weight material. Like it's basically disintegrated, which is great, is kind of surprising, and we don't have as much compost as we thought we were going to do. But the fact that it would instead go into a landfill and get covered in concrete and basically stay there forever is kind of crazy, because it is a product that can very easily go to, you know, feeding, you know, animals that come and get it, or whoever is helping that break down. But yeah, big thing that we try to do is make sure we don't have too much waste, because even with the waste that we do have from things like plastic cups and food trays from our food trucks, like it's unfortunate how much waste we even produce now. So we want to do anything we can to make sure we're not adding to that. Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. keep doing it.
Everything like that, yeah, it's still grass. Yeah, unfortunately. It's not really bad. Silverberry mixes. It's ornamental, usually good people will plant. It's got another name too. it shoots all over the place. It's very annoying. Early, it is spread all over the place. And, yeah, it afterbeats everything. There are a lot of those. Autumn olive, that's the name for it. Silver, Asian silverberry or autumn olive. You gotta dig them up like by the root, because they have a tap root.
Slate.
Brewery sustainability interview with Wyatt Parker. Take one.
Stand by. Looking at her all the time.
All right.
There you go. Anytime.
Oh, okay. All right. To start, introduce yourself. Oh. Introduce your accolades with
Okay.
the farmers, and then just your relationship with the farm.
Okay.
In general.
My name is Watt Parker. I am the president of the Orange Durham Cattlemen's Association.
Let's do it again. Look right here. Don't look at me.
Am I looking off?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here we go.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
I did it again.
So yeah, just introduce yourself.
Okay.
You're the president.
All right. My name is Watt Parker. I'm president of the Orange Durham Cattlemen's Association, and this is my family farm. We've been here since the 40s, and I have made this my full-time position in the last 30 years.
So you've been a cattle farmer your whole life?
Yes, ma'am. My family's had cows the whole time, small farms, and I've increased the numbers over the years, and also included in a chicken operation, a poultry operation. So, yeah.
So, talking to the scale of your farm, how many cows do you have, and how many acres are you?
On this place we're on right now, I have 65 acres. I have several more farms leased, and own another farm a couple miles away. And overall, I have 80 mother cows. 80 mama cows, and that's what we raise. We sell calves, cow-calf operation that sells calves, and we also sell some beef locally.
How many other, are you guys the biggest cattle operation in Orange
Oh,
County?
no. We're middle of the road.
Middle of the road.
There are a couple larger ones, and a lot more small ones, but we're probably on down the line.
Okay, so talking about So, first of all, I guess we can go into the nutritional focus of the spent grain.
Okay.
So, first of all, what does the cow's diet compose of? And like obviously they're big animals, so how much are you feeding them on a daily basis? Like what's
Okay.
the feeding schedule look
Okay.
like, and what does the makeup of their feed look like? Like how much, how much of the spent grain is comprised of the overall diet, if that
Okay.
makes sense, on like
Okay.
a daily basis? If that
Okay.
makes sense.
What we're feeding the spent grain to is replacement heifers and steers that the 4-H kids will show from now till April. And we feed them, they're on pasture during the day. We feed them mornings and afternoons. Usually we get 2 buckets of grain, which is about 40 pounds of spent grain, and 1 bucket of pelleted feed, which is about 20 pounds, 15 to 20 pounds. And then during the wintertime, when they're out of grass, they'll have all the hay they can eat. They'll have free choice hay. But that's what they get a day.
So what's the
Twice a day,
difference in like the nutritional value versus the pellets and the spent grain?
The pellets are 13% protein. The spent grain is about 18% protein. So it's higher protein, and plus it's wet instead of dry. So it takes a lot more weight to do the wet grain, the spent grain, than it does the dry pellets. So
it helps
we
with,
feed
like, the
two. We
volume.
feed 2 to 1. Yeah, we feed 2 to 1 spent grain to pellets. Yeah.
Gotcha. So why is it really important to have? Can you just speak to like nutrition, like having a strict nutritional, schedule, and making sure that the cows are getting enough food? Why is that important to what you're doing?
Well, we're taking the calves. We start when they're just weaned off their mothers when they're about 600 pounds, and we'll feed the steers till they're about 1,300 or 1,400 pounds. So it takes a lot of nutrition to get them that far. A lot of protein, a lot of fiber in their diets to do that. If you put them on grass, it would take twice as long to, if they were strictly on grass and hay. Without that nutritional protein supplements, that it takes much longer to get them that big.
So how did you kind of get introduced? So spent grain, is that just something you've been privy to in your 30 years?
Actually we've just started getting grain the last 4 or 5 years. I had some neighbors getting it that were feeding it, and didn't really have a place to get it, and we kind of stumbled upon Luke and them. Actually, literally stumbled upon them, and we've been getting grain from them for about 4 years now. So, and that's worked out really well. We feed a lot of. We really need it in the wintertime, and we don't need quite as much in the summertime. But we do supplement the cows with it just so we can keep it going, keep the relationship going there. So.
There was a lot of noise on the broad. Can you repeat the part of the question about how did you?
The final part was great.
Okay.
You don't have to say exactly what you said.
Yeah. So
How did you connect with both cities?
yeah. So what kind of got you privy to the importance, or just spent grain, incorporating spent grain into the diet? And then if you can speak a little bit more towards like how you got introduced to Wyatt. I know you say you kind of stumbled upon him, but I'm just curious, was it just chance that you just so happened to run into him?
Okay.
Wait
Yes.
a second, please.
Okay.
Pickup truck.
Yeah. Not
Okay.
be tracked. We started feeding the spent grain about 4 years ago, and we were looking for some contacts with grain. We had some neighbors feeding grain, but we were looking for some contacts. And my sister just happened to call around different places and got Luke, and he's like, yeah, we have, the farmers that were picking it up before weren't doing very good with the scheduling. They were picking it up one week and not the next. So we've been picking it up every week ever since, every time they brew. So it worked out really well for us that we were a steady use for it. So.
And so you've been working with Bull City specifically for the past 4 years?
We have just Bull City, and up until the last couple months, we've picked up another one that just whenever they have excess grain, they'll call. But it's been exclusively Bull City for the past 4 years. Yeah.
And this second place that you picked up, are they also a brewery?
They are.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So when your sister was calling around, was she specifically targeting breweries for this reason?
Yes.
Or?
Yeah. Trying to find a spent grain. Yeah.
Okay. So. Okay.
And it's pretty high demand too, because anytime somebody comes online with a brewery, that people are begging for grain.
So why, from the perspective, from your perspective as a farmer, why are breweries so great for spent grain?
Well, the cattle like it for one thing. sometimes we'll run out from week to week. We'll run out, and when we feed them just the dry pellets, they kind of turn their nose up at it. They're like, I miss my beer, miss my spent grain, you know. So they really like it, and that the wet factor of it is a lot better than just the dusty pellets. So they really like the spent grain. They really do. When we run out and take it away from them, they're not very happy about that. So.
You don't say.
Okay.
And at the end of the sentence, just count yourself 1, 2, 3 before you ask the next question, because you'll come in and give you a great bite at the end, and otherwise you'll be talking over it.
Okay. So throughout our whole filming and like throughout this whole process, we've been following a little bit of a theme of this like closed loop system of like relying on community. Do you feel like your partnership with Bull City and your partnership with, you know, this other brewery has really like established your place in the community? Like, do you feel like that's fortified some type of values in that sense? Like, how do I better word that? So like, why is community important and community initiatives important to your farm?
So we're helping. What we're doing here is with the kids showing. We're actually giving back to the community by letting the kids show our calves. Is what we're actually doing. And so if we're able to use that grain, take the grain that's left over and use that grain and put it towards our kids to show, then we're kind of in that loop right there to keep. We're able to use their grain and dispose of it in a good way, and the kids are able to benefit from that. So.
From your understanding, what would happen if you weren't the one reclaiming the grain?
If we lose the contact with the grain, we'll still feed a commodity pellet. We'll still feed a commodity pellet. It just would increase the cost for us quite a bit because we're feeding 2 to 1 spent grain right now. So it would definitely increase the cost. And we could do that, but it still would. We're very fortunate to have the grain. The cows really like the grain, and it really does a good job helping them grow good nutrients.
And so you go back every single week?
I do. Every time they call, most of the time they do it every week, sometimes every 2 weeks, depending on their sales. But most of the time it's every week. And it's probably 20 miles from here to Durham to pick it up every day, every Thursday. So, yeah.
But it's worth it for.
I think it is. It's kind of expensive in the opportunity cost, I guess you'd say, because it takes me a couple hours to go get it and the driving back and forth. But the way the cattle gain weight on it and the cattle really like it, I think it's worth the extra work to get it and to provide it to the cattle.
So yeah, you work pretty closely with Bull City. What do you enjoy their beer? Like, what's your favorite beer?
I don't really have a favorite. I may get a sample every once in a while when I go, but I don't really have a favorite. I like about all of theirs actually. The lighter beers. Yeah, they do have some pretty good beer they produce there, let's say.
So you enjoy working with Luke?
Absolutely,
both
absolutely.
Of the Lukes.
Yeah, both Lukes. I do enjoy those guys. We converse a lot about the weekends and what's going on when I get there. So yeah, they're really nice guys. And Seth as well. Every time when he's there, I do speak to him quite a bit too. But I enjoy talking to Luke, both of the Lukes every week.
So, yeah, can you just speak more to the work you do with the kids on the farm?
Okay, sure. We, like I say, we wean our cattle in June, and we'll bring the calves here, and we'll put them on the pasture, and we'll start bringing them in the barn and feed them, getting them used to being around us. And then the kids come in. This year we took 6 to the state fair in October, so we were just there a couple weekends ago. And our main show, we'll have 2 or 3 more shows, but our main show is in April. We'll have 15 kids and cows at that show. But they come a couple nights a week and feed, and then every Saturday we have a barn clean out. We clean the barn out, put new shavings in. Everybody comes. It's about 3 or 4 hours of work and fun. You know, we make it fun. But yeah, the kids are very involved in it, and it teaches them a lot about responsibility.
And where do the kids come from?
All neighbors' kids. They're all right here close by, right in around in the community. So everybody's within 3 or 4 miles of here. So, yeah.
I might actually have you re-say that because I did say, oh wow.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So yeah, where do the kids come from?
So most of the kids are right here local. They're within 3 or 4 miles of here. So, and most of them have had an older sibling that has shown, and they've fallen in behind them. So they can show till they're 18, till they graduate, and then they'll. I don't know what that's about. And then they age out of the show that we're in now. So, yeah. But we enjoy having the kids here and teaching them about showing, teaching them about looking after the animals, and cleaning. That your responsibilities. It's a lot of responsibility. It's not just come here and somebody hands you a rope and you walk in the ring, but there's a whole lot to that. A whole lot before that.
So do you think that the work you do, especially with like kids, like local kids, is important for kind of raising certain awarenesses about farming and getting young people excited about farming?
Sure. I would say 98% of the kids that have come through our program do not live on a farm. They, some of them have gotten some smaller animals, but it takes a lot of acres to raise cattle on, and so it's hard to, most people don't have cows in their backyard, so it gives a lot of kids an opportunity that wouldn't ordinarily have that opportunity. So, yep.
You got just about everything. Anybody asking me, is there anything that you want to say that I didn't ask you about?
Yeah. Is there anything you want to say that I didn't ask you about?
No, I appreciate you guys coming out and doing this story and including me in the story. Mm-hmm. And, don't cut this out. I'm good.
We're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. Ready?
Yeah. Hey, Watt, stop 1 second.
Yes, sir.
If I had known, I would have worn my formal overalls. You know, you're ready? Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, I will.
Okay. Go back over that way. Go back over that way.
close that up a bit if you would. Hang on one second. Open it up and stir. We'll get real close this time. Go ahead and open it up and stir. Keep stirring if you would. Close her up. Okay. Come on.